Welcome to another episode of the Bleeding Edge of Digital Health. Very excited about today's guest, David Herbada of Spectroma. David, how are you doing today?
I'm very well. Thanks, Mike.
Very good, very good. And for those that are listening, fill us in on where you're calling in here from.
Okay, I'm based in Oxford, near Oxford, actually, in the UK. And today, rather surprisingly, there's a lovely weather out there. So
You don't get that all the time over in the UK, huh?
practically never, but yes, I mean, that's I can't complain today.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, we're gonna have a discussion today around a really exciting topic, something that's been in the news quite a bit as of late. Which is the full body scan market and what you guys are trying to, or were, I should say, trying to very covertly build until the Sifter website blew the cover on that. But we'll get into that in a second. But yeah, I mean, the full body scan market is we're starting to see influencers, Kim Kardashian, aligned with one of the companies, and it's a market that I think is got a lot of legs and a bright future. But I think one of the challenges of that market is making it accessible to the masses, and
Yeah.
I think that's in addition to having a next level technology. I think that's an area of emphasis for you guys is being able to bring that to market at a price point that makes sense for the masses. But without jumping too far ahead here, I'd love to just have you open up with the origin story of the company, how you got involved, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, I think we can start from the beginning. We started all together in a company called Sonosign, of which I'm still the CEO. That company is a spin-out of Oxford University, and it just happened that we have another technology based on microwave, basically imaging, that we can develop and totally independent from what we were doing in Sonosign. So around 2018, we met with Hjalmar Nilsson, CEO of Nico Health, today called Nico Health. At the time, it wasn't called that way. And a few years later, in the middle of the pandemic, he told us, well, guys, why don't you launch your company, develop this technology, basically to cover one need in the market, which you talk about, which is the need for repeatable, not limited by the physics, full body scans. I think the problem is that simple. And in a way
When
that
you
is
say
accessible.
repeatable, meaning there's a limit because of radiation, in
Yeah.
terms of how many times you can have a CT scan or MRI. It works off a different
Yes,
magnetic
repeatable
resonance.
in the sense that the physics don't involve ionizing radiation. The scans themselves are not too expensive or too lengthy in terms of capture or lead time for the scan. It doesn't require special facilities, rooms, shielding, magnetic shielding, radiation shielding in the case of CT, and so on and so forth. So the idea is trying to find a more simple way of imaging the full body at the deepest ends of the technology, at the physics level. So the need is there. I mean, definitely there's a market. You were mentioning the efforts to make imaging more accessible and more universal. I think we are going to hit the limits of the physics quite quickly on that one. I beat ionizing radiation standards. You can only get 4 CTs a year. That's the prescribed number. 6 if you're a cancer patient. You cannot be doing an MRI every day, because otherwise you will have to spend 2 hours of your life in an MRI every day. So that's quite difficult to do and very difficult to accommodate for the medical profession and the imaging centers. And there's something more important, is that repeated scans over time gives a point of comparison, gives a time series where you can compare the images and detect changes. I think which is particularly key for cancer diagnosis and other conditions. So the origin story started with that conversation. And it was interesting because we were asked to start in the middle of the pandemic. So we had to tell our colleagues in Sweden, well, look, we would love to do this, but we are in full lockdown in the UK. And the answer was, well, yes, you're in full lockdown in the UK, but we are not in full lockdown in Sweden. So we incorporated the company remotely in the UK, and we started basically first phase of remote development, outsource engineering, and so on. That was how the whole thing started. And as of today, we are developing and moving from having a scanner to scan fruits, vegetables, and basically non-living animals or humans. We are basically on the journey to take this technology and finish the development to a full body scanner. So I think that's for humans. That's exactly where we are.
Yeah. So, and interestingly enough, the company was started in stealth mode, and the cover kind of got blown on that with the Sifter article. Tell us a little bit about how that transpired.
Well, essentially what happened is that at one point I got a call in my office and my colleagues told me, well, there's this journalist, she says she's Mimi Belling from Sifted. She's going to do an expose and write an article on the next secret healthcare startup of Daniel Ek, which is precisely the startup of our partners.
And that's
I, of course,
Nico Health.
And that's Nico Health
Yeah.
today, yeah. That's known as Nico Health today. And I have to say, well, I don't really know what you're talking about. So after years hidden under cover, she found out that we had a relationship, and she found it out by checking the Stockholm register and finding out that we had also shares in that company, which were part of our agreements, which were totally confidential. So the question was kind of, well, I see you guys have shares in this company. I do know that this is a Daniel X company. What do you have to say? I said, well, I really don't know what you're talking about. So I called my colleague in Sweden, I called Hjalmar Nilsson, and told him, listen, this is going on. What do you want me to do? So, well, you can't do anything. She's already published the article. So, so I found out that she actually went physically into the Nico Health facilities and walked around, came out, published the article, and got away with it to this date. So that's the story. I mean, it's I think it's one of those anecdotes. I just when you think you've seen it all, this happens. No?
Yeah.
I take it that Daniel Ek is a very interesting figure, and obviously, I mean, he's been saying for years that the next market he would look into is healthcare. He started talking about it in 2015 or 16. So it makes sense for the journalist to actually try to dig up. So we were taken out of stealth mode rather violently. But that allows us to talk about what we do, which I think is very interesting, and start not being in a stealth mode, increase our collaborations. We have quite a few of those going on in Germany today with Fraunhofer Institutes, with Dresden Technical University, and we have also basically started exploring different ways to fund the company. To this date, basically the relationship and the alliance with what has been known now as Nico Health has funded our company through a licensing agreement. So that's where we are.
Yeah, it's an interesting story, and I think speaks, to the gravitas that Daniel Ek has. For those that aren't aware, he was the founder of Spotify, and you're right. I've gone down a little bit of a rabbit hole with this technology, and also what he's building at Nico Health, and read the article, the Sifter article, and it's his focus is longevity. He really wants to be able to figure out how to make not only care available to the masses, but also to try to figure out how to increase the lifespan and whatnot. And so there's an obvious connection there. I know you can't speak too in detail about what you guys are creating as it relates to Nico Health, but we can definitely get into the tech here. You spoke about the use cases of one, cost, it being cost prohibitive right now to get a full body scan. Two, there's a limit on the amount of radiation or magnetic resonance that the body can sustain over a period of time, which makes it unique. And then three, just the one thing that I think is an obvious advantage to the technology you're building is in order to put a CT or an MRI into a facility, it's got a huge footprint.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but what you guys are building seems like it will have. I've seen pictures of what the facilities at Nico Health look like, and they're not big enough to fit a CT or an MRI. So I'm guessing that the scope of the form factor that you guys are building is going to be significantly reduced. But let's jump into the tech. Tell us a little bit about how this is different functionally than an MRI or a CT. It's ultra wide microwaves, ultra wide band
Yes.
microwaves, correct?
Yes, that's correct. So what we are doing differently is that we are imaging using radio frequency. So we are using microwave to image.
Mm-hmm.
We are using a very different approach from the different ones that were tried in the past. We are basically imaging using an antenna array that is around the patient. And we are using a wide array of frequencies. So we are going from 2 to 12 gigahertz, basically, and collecting the signal on the other side. It's an array receiving, and that signal, we process it to actually obtain an image. Now, the way that happens is obviously proprietary, so that's part of the development we've had to develop a specific antenna technology and antenna designs to be able to do this. And it does work on melons and it works on cucumbers and other fruits, which, by the way, is a tradition in medical imaging physics. All the first images on MRI and CT were captured on bell peppers, oranges, and melons. Actually, that's quite common. I've been asked several times why. Well, the reason is because that allows you to cut them in half without them protesting. So you can actually compare the how they look with the image you are taking. So that's how it works. So we do capture, sweep those frequencies, transmit, receive the antenna array receives on the other side the signal. We basically run our algorithm, and then we basically can get the interior imaged. That's how we do
Wow.
it.
What would be what's the targeted time for one of these diagnostics, one of these tests? Because I know one of the challenges with CT and MRI is time as well. It oftentimes can take up to an hour to get one of those
Yep.
diagnostics run. What are you guys looking at?
Okay, with CT, generally CT is quick, is comparatively to MRI, but the issue you have with CT is that you have one chance to take it. I mean, it's not advised in any form or manner that you can repeat CT. So it's just in one go. So what technically happens is that CTs are captured very, very, very quickly. The device does it. And then there's a certain time of reconstruction afterwards. So that's the general functioning, but still around 5 minutes to 10 minutes, not including the prep time when the patient has to be positioned in place, the metals have to be removed to avoid diffraction of the X-rays and so on. We are targeting 5 minutes, and that's that in our case comparable to basically CT, and that's a benchmark based on a 180-meter tall person. So the idea is being able to do sections that are 1 centimeter apart on a 180 meters individual. So it's 180 sections in that period. How can we do that efficiently? Well, the antenna array in the system itself will weight around 80 kilos. So it's quite easy to move the array around the patient, and not how it is done today, which is in CT, which basically you are moving the patient around the array. Or in this case, it's not an array; it's an actual X-ray source in an array of X-ray detectors or crystals. So that's when it comes to CT. With MRI, it's more complicated because there's quite a significant time of preparation by the physicist, radiologist that is operating the system. And then for a full body image of the type we're describing, it wouldn't be unlikely in a 180-meter long patient to spend probably 1 hour and a half to 2 hours.
Yeah.
Which there's a lot of people not able to withstand 2 hours inside an MRI tube. I mean,
Right.
I'm one of those individuals that tends to fall asleep inside the MRIs, but I was surprised by the amount of people that couldn't stand the claustrophobic environment, the noise, and so on. Another problem with this is that you were mentioning it before, is that the hospital needs to be designed around the imaging center when you use machines like this. You need a shielding, you need the power plant in the case of the MRI, which
You need a tech.
generally you need a tech. Yeah, in the UK, for instance, you need to pay around £200,000 a year just for the engineering team to run the system. So we are not talking clinicians. We are talking specifically the engineers taking care of the day-to-day running of the system. We are not talking specific maintenance. Okay. MRI was invented at the time where the Amarillo reserve of helium in Texas was selling the helium at $16 a liter. I don't know what the prices are today. Last time I looked, but they were more like $4,000 a liter or higher. So that's another change as well. And as of today, there's still no high temperature superconductors that can run an MRI. I know there are developments going on, but that's another factor that is limiting how much you can use. So what are we doing ourselves? We are trying to find a system that you can put in a normal room. You don't need shielding of any kind. That doesn't require cryogenic systems, radiation shielding, magnetic shielding, special controls or systems as you take the patient in. And basically that can be placed anywhere. I was discussing ideas around where they could be placed. We were discussing this before, Mike. And a system like ours could be ideally be placed anywhere, like a mall, gym, office building, or other facilities. Definitely could be installed in primary care, near the patient, in the point of care, without
Yeah.
requiring traveling to an imaging center. So that's why we do what we do. We are on the physics side. There are obviously very interesting developments on the AI side of things and image interpretation on top of what we do. So that's the other side of the story. We get a new way of imaging the body using a different type of physics that opens possibilities.
Yeah. I would think, I mean, I could see this in every Walgreens, Walmart pharmacy, Target pharmacy, CVS. There's a lot of different avenues you could go. But this could really reimagine general practitioner care. You know, theoretically, everybody could get one of these every time they go get an annual physical. Especially if you can get reimbursement for it at some point. But I would think a lot of people would opt in for something like this if they went to the GP and they, it was just like taking blood work, which they routinely do. What's the targeted price point?
Okay, so for the whole system that we are developing, our piece of hardware is $120,000. That's the target cost. That will be achieved over time when it's a mass production and series, but we think is realistic. I think we can get to that, and that's enough to put it at the reach of almost any clinic or hospital, not just in the USA or in the UK, but in many other countries where imaging is not affordable or accessible. And I think that's another key point, is that we think this is a way to make to provide better access, which to advance imaging. The old statistics that we had from the WHO, they were talking about only half of the world having access to imaging, the other half probably not having anything, and that half mostly is ultrasound, which has quite a lot of limitations even today. From that half, the split was even worse when we were looking at advanced imaging, as CT and MRI, with estimates that only 10% of the world has access to CT and MRI. And when we talk about more sophisticated systems like PET-CT, we are talking less than 1% or 5%, depending on the estimate.
What could you see? What do you think the price point would be per scan for the patient?
That's difficult to tell, but I think it will be mostly the non-specialist clinicians' time. So I don't think it's far-fetched to think that we are going to look at comparable to ultrasound. maybe $120 a pop to 200, depending
Wow.
on how we do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd get a lot of buy-in from the cash pay market, at least here in the United States. Um, I know it's something I would be more than willing to pay every time I got a physical, just to because now you've got a catalog of your
Mhm.
the development of your body. Um, that's really exciting. Have you guys given any thought to drug development as an avenue to pursue with this?
There's a very interesting area that was highlighted for the work we did with the other company, which is basically assessing the efficacy of cancer drugs. So one of the key problems that you find, and this is actually the trend with pharma companies, is that there is a clear need to track the efficacy of drugs from the phase one. So in other words, you want to, as a pharma company, you want to be able to look at how your cancer treatment drug is working from phase one to phase two, phase three, commercialization, and then patient follow-up. So you get a total history of how that's working for the patient. That's very difficult to do unless you are able to image, in this case, tumors repeatedly. And that's very difficult to tell because the only technology that works efficiently today to tell if a tumor is dead before it necrotizes is PET-CT. And PET-CT is twice a year tops, and due to the ionizing radiation inside and outside. You typically are having the patient take some sort of a radioactive agent that decays and releases basically a gamma ray that is detected by a crystal detector. On top of that, you are basically capturing a CT of the patient using X-ray. So there are not many of those that can be captured of a patient. So the pharma industry has an issue with actually finding ways to check on patients, particularly phase two and phase three drug development, whether the cancer treatment is working or not, and do it quickly so they can actually adjust the dose. Why is it important to adjust the dose in real time based on diagnostic methods? Because in that way you can reduce the chemotherapeutic agent or the treatment you are using and reduce toxicity. So that in turn enables a wider range of patients. So there are all sorts of reasons why it makes sense to have technologies and systems, AI developments as well, image interpretation on top that allow the pharma companies to do just that, improve pharma development and tracking in patients in real life.
Yeah, no, there could be some incredible gains on that front, especially as you mentioned in the oncology side of things. What what's the regulatory burden for a technology like this, and when could we realistically see something like this potentially hit the market?
We have a 3-year development period ahead. So that's the core technology development. I think I have to remind that we are a deep tech company, so we are really in that domain that just happens to do healthcare, no, in that sense. So we are in the physics. So we have that 3-year period that is our project plan to actually develop the human demonstrator. From there, we are envisioning 18 months to 24 for an actual PMA. So that's in the US FDA. In Europe, you have the CE mark and the MDR regulation. The comparison that we will do in terms of technologies will be with MRI. So we need to show that one-to-one comparison with MRI in order to determine that efficacy of the diagnostics if you want. Excuse me. So that's basically the process. So you're looking at 3 years of hardcore technology development to get to an actual demonstrator for human purposes, actually. There's the advantage that the levels of power that our technology require on the microwave domain are very low. So we do not have the restrictions of other technologies in terms of testing and development and regulatory approval, where you actually have a very limited number of tries or a very limited number of samples. Here we can probably do virtually as many as we want. Probably you will get more radio frequency into your body by using your mobile than our system. So
Oh, really?
that's the idea. Yeah. And at not very different frequencies. So
that'll allow you guys to iterate much faster in terms
yeah.
of the development process versus an MRI or a CT if you were trying to build something of that nature.
Yes, that's correct.
More shots
You
on
do
goal.
not, yeah, you do not have the issue that you want to try image reconstruction software version 2 on a different target. You can only do it once. You can do it once and again and again and again, or the capture of the image.
Yeah.
And that really helps us. Right now, we don't even have to think that because we are, as we discussed several times, we are using fruits. But I think we are reaching the point rather quickly where you want to be able to scan limbs and abdomens, and that's the idea.
Really exciting stuff. It's technologies like this that are the reason that I created the show. It's these deep technologies really stand to change the world in a pretty impactful and positive way. So good luck with the rest of the project. I know we'll be staying in touch, and really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and tell the audience a little bit more about what you guys are building, and obviously good luck with the partnership with Nico Health. That sounds like it's going to be a really exciting joint venture there, or whatever the nature of that agreement is. And yeah, just really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show today, David.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. That's it for this edition of The Bleeding Edge of Digital Health. We'll catch you on the next episode.